have the Ayatollah of fantasy rock and roller with us today, Adam Rank. How you doing, Rank?
It looked great in person, and I just can't wait to next year where we can pack it full of 25,000.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I didn't know it was Ball Guys Day. It was being ranked. I mean, how do you lose?
This is the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast.
Welcome to the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast, powered by Fantasy Points Media Group. Today, we are going behind the grind and looking back on the history of fantasy football. And when we do this, we must acknowledge some of the trailblazers in our industry. Tonight is one of those such members. Our guest this evening is one of those early pioneers that led this industry back in the early 90s, earning himself a seat at the Fantasy Sports Writers Association Hall of Fame. Please join us in welcoming the one and only Fantasy Points man, myth, legend himself, John Hansen. How you doing?
Uh-oh. I think I lost you there. What's up? Well, we did well there with the intro. Can you guys hear me? Because I think I lost you for a second.
Gotcha.
No, we're good. I just nailed the
Well,
introduction.
thank you, Matt, for that. There's let's just get right into it. That was way too long. You could have said some old dude, been around forever. His name's John. Hey, John. That would have been fine.
That probably would have worked, but then we would have tried and the John would have been really key on there because we got a lot of old people who've been around for a long time, but none of us have accomplished what you've already accomplished in this industry. We date back to the early 90s there. We're going to touch on this during the show, some of that history. You've probably forgotten more things about fantasy football than we'll ever know ourselves on this show. So hat tip to you for everything you've done and everything you're doing going forward. Obviously, Fantasy Points itself is ahead of the curve there, kind of one of the leaders in the industry as far as innovation goes. And that goes for you and the team over there that you've helped assemble there of great people there from Ben to Barrett to Barfield. I'm starting to think maybe if we had a B in our name, we'd have a better chance. Dolan, Huber, some great guys, Kaplan, Cassell. The names, I can keep going on and on about all the guys that have come over there. So kudos to you on that one.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I know that was a very awkward start here, but it is just, honestly, I have been like so busy working for so long and just keeping everything, up to a high standard and, putting in the hours for everything that I almost don't even really have time to even smell the roses or even think back to it. So it's actually always a little weird, when I hear all those things. I'm like, oh wow, damn, I actually did do all that stuff. It's just been a very, very long journey, but it's been absolutely incredible. I could have never, I always say I called it, like all of it. I did in 1995. My career, I completely called it all. And yet I'm still blown away by how far both things have gone. You know what I'm saying? So it's been unbelievable.
Well, we're about to get really freaky. If you find that weird, we're going to go right back into your whole history here and bring up some stuff from the past. But one of the things we got to talk about here right off the get-go is, I don't know if you remember our very first interaction that you and I had there. I kind of I know you do a lot of podcast appearances at the end of July, beginning of August. I think this might have been April that I might have hit you up, and I was like, hey, John, would love to get you on the ViperCast. It would make Calvin's dad love him once again. So that's where we are right now. We're glad to join you. And we know we got Junior here with us, apparently, and Dad's watching right now on YouTube. So, Calvin
Senior, what's up, man? What's going on?
Yeah, there you go. That's tremendous. My dad is watching the show, so grateful to have you here, John. Grateful to have my dad here in the comments and watching the show. He is a longtime fan of yours. We started talking about this Behind the Grind series before the offseason really started, and when Matt started listing off the names of all the people we could bring on, of course, the Matthew Berries and all that. And so I started talking about all that with my dad. And he goes, "What about that guy, John Hansen? When are you going to have him on? Maybe if you have him on, I'll watch." So here we are. You're on the show. He's watching. He's a longtime Fantasy Guru fan. Like I said, I used to, for his birthday, I used to buy him a subscription to fantasyguru.com. So very familiar with your work. Very, he's called into your show. So yeah,
now, did
I'm
you
sure
used to email? Have you ever emailed in as like a kid buying it? Because I had a couple of those where like 15-year-old boys would like hack into the dad's email or use another email and get a hold of me, and they wanted to buy their dad a subscription at like 15 years old. It was like an awkward transaction, but did you ever do that?
It was not
Cal
that.
Jr. all day.
Like much like yourself, like can't believe you've accomplished so much, and you're 35 years old. The way you look, I was outside of college by the early 2000s, and which is when we started this. So
okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Oh, Matt, you're on mute.
Yeah, I know. I'm usually good for that once a show here. I was just going to do a little bit of recruiting here, try to get some of the socials out there. So I'm lit with the kids and what she's saying and whatnot.
Hey, nothing like a little bit of awkward silence here to kind of keep the people engaged.
Oh, absolutely.
You never know what's coming at you. But again, I appreciate all the props and all that. I'm always just trying to like stay afloat. And again, I don't really, and I don't really schmooze all that much. Honestly, I just literally don't have the time. Over the years, I've continually acquired jobs that are, dream jobs that I'd be crazy to pass up. So I keep getting hired for jobs. And this is why I'm always working and never have time to chop it up with people like you, but I'm happy to do it tonight.
And we're glad. So we do have this contractually obligated portion of the show where we have to talk some football. It's almost like we have to. We got the preseason going on here right now. So I'm just going to kind of jump in here. I know you have nailed a bold prediction on the past. We're going to get to that bold prediction a little bit later. But do you have any bold predictions kind of going into 2021? Is there something that you're kind of planting that flag on right now? This is going to happen. I'm going to speak it into existence.
I don't know about, I haven't really thought that much about like a bold prediction. I think, my bold predictions are, I guess, the players that I rank a lot higher than the masses. So I absolutely have gravitated toward a couple of people. I took Antonio Gibson at 7 overall in a high stakes draft. That would be, I believe, proactive. There are a couple of other players that I've like really, just kind of homed right in on. And Darnell Moody, you guys may have seen the video I did where I'm like, I'm constantly monitoring my projections and where I have them slotted positionally with the ADP. And I always want to stay ahead of the curve there. And as I'm looking at, a kind of conservative projection on Mooney, I was still a lot higher than, doing some diggings. We all knew about him last year. Our guy Kaplan, last year the reporting was really down. Kaplan has a great source there. Our guys were all over Darnell Moody and keeper leagues, dynasty and all that. Well, it gets even better because he continues to ascend. Everything is added up with Justin Fields added. They have a thin receiving core, and he's my breakout receiver of the year. Boom. That's it. I'm on record. That's my guy.
So question about the projections for Darnell Moody. When you're projecting for a guy whose quarterback situation is a little up in the air, how do you handle that in terms of, are you deciding that Justin Fields is starting at a certain point and taking the predictions from there?
Yeah, I think the way I've been doing the projections, that's kind of like my specialty. Like that's what I've been doing for 25 plus years. I do articles obviously as well. But I actually project the number of starts for everyone. So I've projected Fields well ahead of Dalton, from day one. So I am projecting Darnell Mooney with about 85% Justin Fields baked on in there. You know what I'm saying?
I'm with you on Darnell Moody. I've been pumping up his ADP, probably myself here as well, because, he was going in about the 10th round. You're looking at wide receiver 53 to 58 at one point. I really believe he can challenge for a low end wide receiver 2 this year. I really think he's got that. You look back on that film, and Mitch Trubisky was his quarterback, and he was still producing more receptions for a wide receiver than any other Bears player in the history of the Chicago Bears. And this was with Mitch Trubisky. You watch Mitch Trubisky miss him by 15 yards while he's wide open. He turned Jalen Ramsey inside out on many occasions. You give him with a competent quarterback, look out. Like I don't think wide receiver 20 to 28 is out of the possibilities for him. I think the moon is we can go to the moon with Mooney on this one, so to speak.
Guys, it's going to happen. All right. So check the tape. Old takes exposed. I don't care. This will actually happen. And, very smart kid. And it continues to impress. Good kid, good head on his shoulders. We got to watch out for all receivers when they start balling out. They all get a little, but right now he's tight, so, and there were countless number of plays last year on tape where, as a rookie, he's wide open. And actually, Foles was even worse. It was just a joke. So throw it all out the window, and it's a massive upgrade at quarterback. And again, it's going to be Fields more often than not. And it's a perfect marriage, working off Allen Robinson, tight ends in the middle field, run heavy. It's perfect. So he's going to ball out.
So I got to ask, speaking of teams and players that ball out, I got to ask you this question because this has come across my feed a couple times. Is this the year for the Vikings?
To do what? To
I heard you
break our hearts again?
Perfect answer.
Well, actually, I actually called that in January. Because I've been making fun of him for about 7 years now. I call Mike Zimmer Mr. Every Other Year. And go check his record, and you're like, oh, wow, look at that. Every other year. And I've called the last 4 years exactly right in terms of NFL-wise. Like, they'll be good this year. No, they're going to suck, And now in January, I was like, oh, yeah, they're good. They're back. They're going to be good. So they're going to be probably an 11-win team.
There you have it. That's a solid prediction there. We don't know how that NFC North is going to shake out. Tera's a resident Packer fan, so you probably might have got her a little bit, a little ruffled there a little bit on that prediction, but
I'm good. The Packers predictions have been all over the board. You have some people that are confident in us repeating. You have others that are saying only a 10-win season. So I'm used to hearing it, the variety.
So you've been a long-time Packer fan?
Yes.
Well, you remember the undrafted free agent quarterback that was there a couple of years ago, Joe Callahan. I don't know if you remember him. He was the 3. He was supposed to actually start in the Hall of Fame game. The year Brett Favre got inducted in the Hall of Fame, whatever that was like 2017, something like that. And he was off and on the team for a while. That was actually my son's Pop Warner quarterback. My son was a receiver too. So
that's cool.
And I coached him in Little League baseball too, and my son played baseball with him. And he was 6 years old, biggest Brett Favre fan you've ever seen, and winds up playing quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
Awesome.
Wow.
And was
That's
set
really cool.
was set to start the Hall of Fame game the weekend that Brett Favre got inducted into the Hall of Fame for the Green Bay Packers. Think about that.
Wow.
He
That's
went
crazy.
to a D3 school, not even remotely close to being drafted, and the kid made it to the Packers and was set to start in that game. Unfortunately, there was a big weather issue, and for safety reasons, they had to cancel the game.
Wow.
All right.
I remember that now. Yeah, I remember that about the field conditions and everything like that. They just kind of popped that off.
That story sounds like he's lying. Okay, that's like too. It actually happened.
It's very specific. It's got to be believable.
Yeah. True.
Well, John, I'm going to come right out here and say it as a disclaimer to the show. We don't fact check nothing over here. So
Good.
Right.
we're good to go.
My friend Michael Rappaport. I don't know if you ever have seen his podcast. I know he's controversial, but he was my former radio co-host, and I did a year of TV with him too.
All right, John. So the time of the show has now come where it's time to forget about the football talk, any of the current stuff, and we're going to just talk about you. And it's time for you to come into the Viper Pit. We've got Matt, we've got Tera, we got Major, we got me. We all have questions for you. We'll take some turns asking those. And we like to start off with the same one. And this one's really perfect for you, knowing that you mentioned those jobs that you've had. One of the former ones as a disc jockey at a rock station. So music must be kind of important to you. What would your intro music be? If you had like one piece of intro music that could introduce you to a crowd, if you were a closer or a wrestler or something like that, what would that one song be?
Well, that's a floating situation. I mean, that's fluid, right? That depends on like how old am I? What era, like, so that's a floating thing. I could tell you though, that I actually did have to pick a song for just that at some event for Sirius XM. Wasn't that long ago, and it was Silver Sun Pickups. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. It's a really badass opening. The hell's the name of that song though? But anyway, it's hard, loud, high energy, pounding,
Silver Sun Pickups. That's a deep pull.
Yeah, we're gonna have to Google that. We're gonna have to do a little bit of listening here. We basically make a whole soundtrack just from the this question from all the guests that we've had on here.
I guarantee you've heard. I would almost venture to say you've heard the damn song, and now I'm gonna find out the name of it, and I'm gonna play it. But continue.
Well, that's over to you now, Major.
Oh, my bad. So the importance of growing up, we all play sports. What was your favorite sports? Some of the players that you enjoy watching growing up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually found out that I take after my mother's side, and my mom took after her dad's side. And I found out my grandfather was like a semi-pro basketball player in Manhattan. Didn't get a single piece of genetics for that though, unfortunately. See what I did there? You're surprised. Did not play any basketball. I could hang a little bit on the playground, but I played mainly football and baseball. Now it was tough to differentiate the two of them. I think I was better at football, but I had problems. I got injured quite a bit. I would make like the spectacular play and break my collarbone, stuff like that. And actually, my parents precluded me. They would not let me play high school football. And that's all I wanted to do. Because I was very fast. I was skinny, but I was fast. I could catch. So I just outrun everybody and just catch it. Go deep all the time. One year, I tried to sneak in. I was like, I'll play soccer. Hated that. Next year, tried again. Well, let me run cross country. I'll try that. Hated that. And then I just started, smoking weed basically. And that was it for sports. But I did love playing Little League baseball and Babe Ruth. And again, I didn't play much in high school. I broke my leg when I was 12 and I was out for like a year and a half. It totally destroyed me. I always tell the story. I was one day too old per my birthday to play Little League. I missed a whole year Little League when I was by one day. And then the year before I broke my leg and missed 2 years. So it was a nightmare. So I literally went from being like 8 to playing on a major league baseball field, basically. So that's quite the upgrade there. It was a little tough.
Who were some of your favorite teams growing up?
I'm a Dodgers fan from my whole life. And
are you from LA?
I'm actually from Brooklyn originally. So people ask me all the time, what do you when I was a little kid, my brother was a Mets fan. I saw Brooklyn Dodgers and we lived in Brooklyn. I'm like, well, why don't we root for these guys? My mom said, well, they moved away. I said, well, they're the furthest team away from the Mets that possible, right? And she said, yeah. I said, that's my team. So I've been a huge fan of them. And Minnesota Vikings, unfortunately, although they're at least entertaining.
So I gotta kind of touch on that Minnesota Viking connection there, because you've got teams to choose from in that New York area. You've got Buffalo, you've got the Giants, you got the Jets, you got all that. And you can flip over to LA and you got options there. What's with the Minnesota Vikings? Because I'm interested, as a Raiders fan in Canada, I'm interested to hear how a New Yorker became a Vikings fan.
Well, I am half Norwegian. So my father's family my dad is first generation American. His mom was born in Norway. So that's probably it right there. My first name was actually, for a day, I was named Eric, like Eric the Red, so I think that was probably it. But
for a day, like, how does that work?
What's that?
You said for a day.
What do you mean?
You said your name for a day was Eric. Did I read that wrong?
No, Eric the Red is a famous, like, Norseman,
Got it.
Historical figure. He's a famous Viking.
Got you.
So my family, yeah, like I said, so that was probably a lot of it. But I actually was a big fan of, we're going way back here, but Howard Cosell used to do highlights on Monday Night Football. And it was the only time back then that no ESPN. It was the only time you could see highlights around the league. And it was like a good, 7 minutes, but it was like the greatest 7 minutes of TV for the whole week, because you saw all the highlights. And he would, Howard Cosell obviously was very, gregarious, more bombastic. And somehow I also gravitated to how he would say, Fran Tuck and 10-2, Ahmad Rashad, Ahmad Rashad. He was a Vikings receiver when I was 7 years old. So between all that and the purple, I'm like, that's it. I'm in.
Nice.
Great.
So let's keep it on a personal track, but maybe jump forward a bit, maybe towards your career. Tell us about a decision that changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a really good one. Again, most of the decisions were, do I want to try to get this gig? And, if so, I get offered, it's not really a decision. There was I think, what comes to mind, and I actually thought about it somewhat recently, was when, I started a magazine kind of out of nowhere. It was like, it was actually a lot easier to do than you would think, but, I was pretty established, and I got together with, these guys, Tom Kesnick and Greg Ambrosius, still work with them, the NFFC guys. They were working for a publishing company, and they had basically access to newsstands, basically. And it was like a partnership where it was all my content, and they would print it and design it, print it, and sell it on the stand, get it on the stands. And I think we split the money and all that. So it was kind of cool, because, back then it was like, every magazine had a website, but did a website have a magazine? So I was like, I thought that was cool. And that took made a nice little impact. I was technically the first fantasy entity to interview a player. It was then reigning Rookie of the Year Clinton Portis. And that opened up a lot of doors. I was kind of the head of the curve on the whole, keeping tabs with the beat writers. I had a column in there as early as 03, 32 beat writers answered 32 questions. So I made a lot of relationships that way. In fact, my Denver guy was Adam Schefter. And Adam worked for me on a very small level, but I would, get to know these guys, and I, got a hold of him for the magazine for this article. And I'd throw him a little extra money. I was like, here's an extra, just give you a little extra here, or whatever, give you this, just for the right to contact you, And so, yeah, he was my Denver guy. He was absolute money. But a great question. And I was actually thinking about it. That starting a magazine was actually kind of low key underrated, something I hadn't really thought about until you just asked it, and recently.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just kind of keep on that track here, because that's kind of where I wanted to go to. Just kind of talking about that journey. Some of the changes from when you first started to where we are today, from snail mail to the internet, We've heard from other people like Paul Charchi in there, who also did the newsletter. We've heard from Bob Harris and fax machines and 1-800 numbers. We heard about people back in the day putting the radio on, hitting record just to catch the stat line all the time to do the scores for their home leagues, because there was no internet at that point to basically break it down. We were going back and doing all our fantasy football drafts and tallying up the scores by the newsstand newspaper and kind of going from there. What are some of the changes that you've seen from the beginning to where we are now? And then kind of a little bit further, where do you see us going in the future?
You guys got 3 hours? I mean, I'm only breaking your balls, but that is that actually what I was more interested in the early stages of kind of the explosiveness, because as you mentioned, when I had this idea to do this little newsletter, the way it started was I was on this little TV show in New Jersey that had a pretty good audience. And back then there weren't a lot of cable channels, it was like 30 channels. So I did a show before Monday Night Football. Actually, we were pretty crazy and all that. And I started giving out fantasy football advice, the guru thing and all that. Some guy in my league called me that. And I said, let me start this little newsletter and, get a little residual income and all that, So it was too early though I had a website promoting it. So the first, year or so I had a website promoting it. And then 2-3 years later, then I started with an email update, and then it just slowly progressed to more, sophistication. But I mean, I forgot more things, than I can remember, honestly, but it's a slow, painful process sometimes, trying to walk someone through when you send even a lot of content in an email and it will automatically download it to a file. And they're like, oh, I don't know how to read that, and you got to walk people through that as you're trying to finish your work and all that. So a lot of technical glitches, a lot of just flying by the seat of my pants. One story that really stands out, and I'm jumping around here, but it's a long story how it happened. But in the very, very early days of mailing lists, I had like a listserv, it was called. And I guess somebody convinced me it was a very quick and efficient way to email people a lot of content or a little content, but quickly. And I actually kind of invented the breaking news update, I believe, in the fantasy business. I think it was like 1997 when it was a big thing. I sent out this flash email. But so it was very early on, and somehow I got a virus up on my computer. And what I didn't realize was the virus from my computer emailed my address book. The address for this listserv that triggered the mailing was in the address book. So
whoa.
Long story short, I'm building up this business for 3-4 years at the time, whatever. And this happens on a Friday night, mind you, like Halloween weekend. I was actually hosting a party at my house right before this happened. Sent out a virus to the entire customer base. And it was just, I was like, that's it. Good night, everybody. There's no way I can survive this. And, so I did rather than act like, hey, it wasn't me, I did proactively send out an email and said, hey, do not open this, which saved a lot of people. But I thought for sure it was over, and said to my wife, I'm like, oh, well, gave it a shot. What can we do? And then the next year subscriptions tripled. So I'm like, I want to put out an advertisement. We send our customers viruses and they still come back. So get on over here,
That must have been one heck of a virus to be able to pick up more clientele when it was all said and done. Now, you kind of mentioned being the first into a lot of things here, the breaking news and stuff, but I want to kind of get an opinion here. I know you were one of the first in the fantasy football realm to get into Twitter on top of things. How did the guru get into Twitter? Like, what was the thinking behind all that? Because you were one of the first ones into this space, the Twitter sphere, if you so call, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I didn't even really realize that. That I would have to credit. I'm always ahead of the curve. I like to take pride in that, in everything. I'm the annoying guy who says I knew that band before anybody else did. But this one I would have to credit Joe Dolan. So I hired Joe right out of college. So he was like 22 years old. So obviously he was very dialed in. I mean, he's Mr. Social Media, that guy right there. So that was it. And, I guess I saw what, I guess that was, yeah. So what happened was I was I kind of against it, Facebook and all that, but I got invited to play Facebook in 2008, I believe, wanted to get into content like games, and they were going to run fantasy leagues and all that. So they reached out to experts to play in this expert league. I know Matt Berry was in the league. Fabiano, I'm sure, was in the league. All that. So I was like, oh, all right, cool. And the guy, Jeff Ma, the movie 21, about the MIT guys who go to Vegas based on a true story. He's like the guy, the real guy from that. He's the one who organized it all. But anyway, I had to create a Facebook account. And I was like, here we go. I've been avoiding this, So I'm like, all right, I do it. And then, of course, I'm being bombarded with people from high school that I haven't talked to in, a long ass time. And then I was like, oh, okay. I could see. I mean, it wasn't that hard to see, like, wow, you could reach people with this, and not like be a beggar, but you could market to people. And if you do it right, and create a little brand. So I actually was very aggressive on Twitter. I had to kind of retire from it. It was like a full-time job, but yeah, from like 09 through like maybe 2013, 14, I was like real active and aggressive. And I guess that's how I got the followers I have, because I'm a terrible follower on Twitter, by the way. I mean, I rarely offer much because I'm too tired.
Well, I'll jump in and just ask you about something you already said here, because we were going to talk about making the decision from this being kind of a hobby to being what your full-time career. But I want to ask you about like that specifically. You mentioned how you saw this industry evolving and becoming something much bigger. Like, what was it about this industry that you thought was so ripe for turning into what it's turned into? Like, how much of that was kind of blind faith, and how much of that you were just fully 100% convinced, like, yeah, this is going to be a big deal?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think I've always been pretty good in terms of what is commercially appealing. Pop culture as well. It just, I knew that, not to be arrogant, but I always say, like, just because I don't like something doesn't mean it's not good. But if I like it, it's good. I mean, that's like, a little bit of the ego there. But I thought, hey, I know what this means to me. I can see it. I've got very good intuition. So that's a big plus. And I'm like, I can absolutely project this out long term as like being like the most popular activity in America, basically, so I kind of did see that. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. I think even some of the things that you're talking about where, getting the beat writers on, like those sort of things, like those are really, those are things that we still do today. And you pioneered a lot of those things. And, I guess there's something. Like, do you feel like there's something in your background that caused you to be able to sort of see where some of these trends were going to go? Is like, do you have a marketing background, or is this just kind of like, this is just pure natural talent for being able to see what's coming?
Yeah. Again, I mean, I just felt like it was everything that I would want in like a, let's say, non-athletic or strenuous, activity. I mean, it had competition, it had gambling, it had excitement, it was sports related. I was always very into I'm not a big math guy per se, but certainly into stats, so it had it all. I'm like, this is the greatest thing of all time. And for me, it's just perfect because I always, I always say, recently, more doing like reflecting and things like, I'm just so grateful for this whole fantasy thing because I wanted to get into broadcasting when I graduated from college. I have a degree in communications, radio, TV, film. And I was a young father. My wife and I were parents when we were 23 and 21. So I didn't feel like I could kind of pay my dues. I was working at the radio station making crap, So I kind of for a little while there was like, oh, well, it's just not really going to work out because, I got to, help, raise my kid and my wife and all that. I've got financial responsibilities. So that kind of was, the reason I went off and tried to find something as well. But that not only did that whole thing work for the financial element, because that's kind of what I really was initially doing, like looking to support my family. That it also opened up a complete backdoor to broadcasting. And that to me, to this day, is like absolutely blows my mind. So I guess I was just completely built for this because, I'm a pretty good writer, not the best, pretty good radio guy, not the best, all that. And also the reason I started this, I was, pretty damn good in fantasy and making calls and all that, intuition and all that. So I guess I was just made for this crap. It's unbelievable.
Speaking of fantasy, go ahead, Tera, you got it.
No, sorry, I was just going to say, I really love that because I have a background in communications and broadcasting too. And my intention was to go into broadcasting. And that was like 10 years ago. And I would have never thought that fantasy sports would have been an avenue to go into that. So like what you're saying, it's kind of crazy that how you could go that route in something that you would have never expected to get back into what you originally were planning.
Absolutely. And you and everyone else, you do actually have a little bit of an advantage. Now, granted, way more competitive, but the ability to be on camera right now and put yourself out there and speak in front of a camera. I mean, I went to college for it like you, but in, the early 90s, I'd have been blown away to have that kind of opportunity. So I had to do it the old fashioned way, like brick mortar, buildings and the like, and somehow it all worked out. Luck is the residue of design, but nice. I was absolutely lucky in so many ways. Just geographically, I live 10 minutes from NFL films. I could be in New York City in an hour and a half, DC, Baltimore, 2 hours, so it's a nice little location too.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite leagues you've been in? Your most favorite home leagues?
Well, unfortunately, man, I don't, those are gone. Like,
really?
No, they've been long gone, man. My initial hometown league basically disbanded because I just kept winning and they thought I was cheating. I'm dead serious. I mean, it really did kind of happen that way. I started doing this newsletter in the mid 90s. Yeah, I was more dialed in, but they were literally acting like I got the answers to the test, like the coaches, I was getting tips from the coaches. I'm like, dude, guys, simmer down now. I'm just studying up a little bit more than you guys. So yeah, then that disbanded. My favorite league is the league we do on the radio show called the ACI, the Adam Kaplan Invitational. And it's a listener league, just randomly named after Adam Kaplan, just because, basically. And I talk a lot of smack about it, and it's people submit videos to get in the league, and it's unbelievable. It is not that I had any idea, not to go off on a tangent, but this is actually kind of cool. The league's been around like 7 years now, and it's a 14-teamer, so it's good number of people coming in and out, but there has been a community of ex-alumni of the league who have all come together and formed it's like this ever-expanding group of people who would have never gotten together otherwise, I don't think. I mean, maybe within fantasy could have happened, but not quite like it has. I mean, these are people who now like travel from state to state to like meet people physically, you know, and like, I mean, like it's completely impacting lives, you know, and it's all going on behind the scenes, and I'm sitting there doing my thing, and like it's kind of centered around me, but I'm like oblivious because I'm like just staying ahead of everything. But yet here it is, it's been growing and cultivating, and it's just like, well, that's pretty cool, you know. I mean, I guess that's a good way for me to give back, I guess.
So,
I love that. I love that. I seen some of those. Have you ever been blown away by one of these submissions? Is there one submission? You mentioned these videos to kind of get yourself into this thing. Is there one where you just kind of shook your head and you're like, yeah, you're in. I don't need to see the rest. You're in this thing no matter what.
They're so flattering, you know. Like there was one where the guy like was playing himself in the mid 90s. He had the mullet. He's running out to the mailbox to get the newsletter. And then he goes in like, you know, the time machine. And then he goes into the mailbox, and there's the app, you know, on his phone, you know. I'm like, geez. Yeah. All that kind of stuff is just, again, it's just incredibly flattering. And, you know, as I say to other people like you guys, just keep doing what you're doing and just keep putting yourself out there, because the one thing I've learned is you never know who's watching or listening or reading. You just never know. I've had so many brushes with absolute greatness that I don't even know about, just from people listening or watching or reading. But I've had plenty of people that I come to find out were following me for a long, long time. You know, like I'll give you an example, and this is going way back, but I think it was Jules McLean, who was actually on staff with us. She reaches out and says, "Oh, I'm in a league with Meatloaf." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Love Meatloaf," you know? And I was like, "Oh, give me, tell him I'm a fan, you know, I'll hook him up with a subscription." Right. So he emails me back. He's like, "I've been a subscriber for like 9 years." I'm like,
Nice.
"What?" You know,
Wow.
No idea.
That's cool.
That's amazing. Kind of staying adjacent to that. You mentioned, I mean, we know you've done a ton of incredible interviews, and you mentioned, you know, your first big one with Clinton Portis. You know, share with us some of the most memorable interviews you've done.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I gotta default straight up to Marshawn Lynch in 2008. And he was actually, see, when I had a magazine, you know, I pick one guy, that's my guy. I'm writing a story about him. And it would always, you could never do like I didn't want to be like the obvious guy. So I would always get like the second tier guy, the young kind of up and coming guy. So when I actually decided to go with Marshawn, I was like, you know, it was a little like people like, really? Marshawn Lynch on the cover? I was like, yeah. I was like, I like the guy. I mean, I said I could tell he's an old soul. I like that guy, you know. So and by the way, somehow I got very lucky to even get Marshawn Lynch, because this is early on, but even his second year in the league, he was iffy with the media. Like it was not good. So I'm talking to this guy, Chris Brown, who still works for the Buffalo Bills. You know, he's like the main media guy. And I'm like, "What do you think, man?" I gotta sit down with Marshawn. And he's like, "Well," he goes, "you know, either it's going to be one of those things, like if he likes you, he's going to be the greatest, you know, if he doesn't, it's going to be tight. Like he's just going to tighten up." I was like, "Oh boy, what am I going to do here?" So, you know, I'm a little crazy, you know, in a good way, I like to think. So I'm like, all right, well, I got to take a shot here. You know, I'm a 39-year-old pasty white guy. Let's give it a shot. So he's walking up to me, and he puts his hand out, and I was like, "Yo, Marshawn, what's crack-a-lackin', dog?" And stop. And I was like, this could go really badly or very well. And luckily he was like, "Oh, damn," you know, and that was it. And it was unbelievable. Like we really, really he had a great interview. He said, "I'm going to open up." He's like, this has really been good. You know, give me your card. Let's stay in touch. And I was like, wow, we bonded. I mean, like, it was like really amazing, but then unfortunately he got into a little bit of trouble. He had a little vehicular thing where it ended up not being that bad, but I think then he kind of went a little behind in the shadows, but that it was incredible. And I just, to this day, I'm like, I feel so good about that choice of picking Marshawn Lynch. But that's an iconic interview, I think, in these parts. You ain't get Marshawn Lynch now.
You're right.
No, I love watching some of those videos that he does now of his own accord there, where he kind of comes, so you see that personality that you kind of mentioned there and how he gets into it. And he's just one of those guys you just want to watch. I don't know what it is about him. You just gravitate right to everything that he's doing.
Oh yeah. He's real. I'm a very real person. So he can sniff it out. I was goofing around with him. I asked him like, favorite rappers. He's like, Too Show, E40, Messi, Marvin. I was like, oh damn, same as me, which I have no idea who these people were. But
I was about to say, really?
Yeah, exactly. I had no idea, but it was good. It was good. But unfortunately, one of these days before I head on out of here in this business, I definitely need to catch up with Marshawn because he really loved the interview and it came out great. And he had a great year, by the way.
Yeah.
Speaking of great years, great careers, back in 1995, you kind of put it all out there on a second-year kid who's now made the Hall of Fame, kind of saying this guy could be the next Jerry Rice. He's that good, kind of thing. Fast forward to 2020, you get an opportunity to kind of interview him right before his Hall of Fame induction. What was that moment like? Someone that, he missed it. He should have been in a lot sooner. We can all agree on that. But finally getting him to have that interview after all these years, what was that like?
Yeah, absolutely surreal. I mean, I've had so many of these surreal things over the years where I'm like, kind of like, am I real? Is this real here? Because I actually would credit Isaac Bruce for my entire career. And I've told him that multiple times, so to go full circle with everything and then support Isaac's, bid, I guess, offer up any support I could. And then to be there, 1 year we did, and he didn't even get in. Then the next year he did. And to be there and see that just absolutely incredible. And, no question about it. Like that call gave me the confidence to do it all. Like that was it. It was like, I could survive 200 bad calls because it was literally the best call I've ever made. First call, best call, never topped ever. And the reason, the way I did it was, I've told the story, but this is before DirecTV. This is before the Sunday Ticket. But I had a big dish on the roof, and I used to move it around like a radio antenna and get raw network feeds.
Nice.
So, and sometimes you had audio, sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you could hear the announcers during the commercial breaks, like cursing and stuff, just raw feeds, you're just picking them up over there. So I would watch games and scout players. And the year before, I'd scouted him out. He had like one or two like really big games. I was like, wow. And then I knew that summer he was blowing up. I think I did see him in a preseason game. I saw him in a preseason game. I was like, that's my guy. That's it. And then he ended up having, I think at the time it was the fourth most receiving yards in football history in a single season out of nowhere. He was undrafted in like 75% of leagues that year. It was unbelievable.
That's really amazing. And, so let's say, obviously you said that vaulted your career, but let's say there's a world where you're doing something besides fantasy football. What would that be?
Another great question. I'd like to think I could almost do well with a lot of different things just because I have a very good work ethic. So I was very ambitious, kind of not going to be denied kind of a guy. I always thought I could have been a pretty good record label executive because, again, to my previous point about being the annoying guy who said I knew that they were going to, blah, blah, blah. I've made as many good calls about bands as fantasy. Well, not quite as many, but I made some really good ones. Like, I'll give you an example. 91, sitting on the couch with my girlfriend. Video comes on MTV. Completely different sound. Never heard of these people. Watched the video. Went, that band's going to change the face of rock and roll music. And she's like, get the hell out of here. It was Nirvana.
No.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So could have done that, I think. I am a Hollywood suck up. By the way, I will be appearing on Curb Your Enthusiasm this year.
Nice.
In a scene with Larry David. So talk about surreal. Could have been one of those Hollywood producer types. What's that?
That's the greatest show of all time.
Oh, you're a fan?
Big fan.
Oh man, wait till you see it, man. It's gonna be. I mean, it's one scene, but it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Like just basically hanging out with Larry David in the cast for like an entire day.
You already recorded
talking football.
This is already recorded?
Oh yeah. I did it.
If I'm not so I was going to say, if you weren't doing this, I think you could be that person, that actor on the silver screen there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, should be dropping in December. It's an episode in December, give or take, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, toward the end of the season. Yeah.
This isn't your first rub with Hollywood too. You made some appearances there on The League. You were on The League there playing yourself. Yeah. And then we talk about Curb Your Enthusiasm. This isn't your first time rubbing elbows with Larry David and stuff. I believe you were in like their premiere back in 2017 already, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, again,
if I Twitter stalk you farther enough back.
All made possible by one guy, Jeff Schaefer, who is him and his wife, Jackie, created The League. So one day I'm in the office. I actually had an office building and everything. It was like May or something, and get a call into the office. It was a guy from out there in Hollywood wanted to know if he could use our magazine cover. So I get on the phone, and it's Jeff Schaefer. Turns out he's like a fan of mine, and he's like, then I find out what he's doing. Like, he used to write for Seinfeld, and now he's starting this. He's got this pilot, basically. So him and I hit it off. We're the same age. Basically, I think he's a year younger, but really, really hit it off, hanging out. And then he's like, oh, I can't believe I'm talking to the guru. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? I'm like, you're on for Seinfeld, dude. Come on. So I'm like, it was crazy. So, turns out he was like, can I use your magazine? And I'm like, of course. So like one of the very first scenes of The League is the character Kevin sitting on the toilet reading my magazine. And then a year or two later, he said, hey, I can write you into an episode. And I'm like, unbelievable. Yeah. So I did that. Got Adam Kaplan in playing ourselves on the radio. I always break Adam's balls about this, but initially he's like, yeah, you can just do this yourself if you want. I'm like, we'll bring Mr. C. We'll bring Kaplan in with us, and which is good because it made the scene, but we went out there, we had our own trailers, all like improv. It was difficult because we were playing ourselves hosting the radio. So we weren't face to face with the actors because they were on the phone. So it would be like Nick Kroll would be on the other side of the room, basically playing Ruxin on the phone, So that was a little weird and awkward. So, but it was awesome. Yeah. I can't believe that was 10 years ago. So I have an IMDb page because of that, which I think is cool. And this will be an addition. This will be an addition. So I don't know, man. Maybe I could be a recurring character on the background.
Nice.
That'll be incredible.
The future is bright. I love it. Taking it back to fantasy sports. Tell us one thing that fantasy sports has taught you about yourself.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day that you can never be complacent and that you really do need to always challenge yourself and try to get better, because I did have I think there's a reason I think that I'm one of the OGs, as they say, and still around. I like to think doing things at a high level. There's not many people out there who could even have physically done it, honestly, because it's pretty rough. So I think the way I did it was always never being complacent, always kind of looking inward and thinking to myself, what are my weaknesses? And that's a lot of what, Fantasy Points is about, actually, because, Graham and Scott are the big numbers guys. That's not my strong suit. So, if you can't hire those who can, or work with those who can. So, yeah, I think that would be it. To always have stick-to-itiveness and always look to move the bar ahead and set the bar high, but never get complacent and always challenge yourself to get better in every way.
Yeah. So being an OG of the fantasy football world, like, name some of the people who helped you along the way since you were at the beginning. I think it'll be interesting to see how many people helped you along the way.
Yeah, well, I got to give a shout out right off the bat to Bob Harris. It's funny because, it wasn't that big of a deal, but I bring it up still, like trying to think of how many years it was. It was 24 years ago. He created a logo for me, basically a graphic. And I thought that was pretty, I don't think I would have done it, honestly. I mean, if I'm keeping it totally real, because I am, I'm pretty competitive and I'm out there in the marketplace. I'm like, I'm not helping out a competitor of mine by designing a nice logo for this guy. I'm like, no way. But Bob Harris did. And, you guys know Bob, so you're not surprised. But, he did it 24 years ago. His partner, Emil Kadlik, I would always like to, I think a lot of my relationships I like them. To think they are always have been mutually beneficial. Adam Kaplan and Steve Cohen. Steve is the senior vice president of sports for Sirius, but he had a website, footballinjuries.com, with Jay Glazer. Those three right there really, taught me a lot about reporting and journalistic standards, which didn't exist in the fantasy business before those guys. And basically, I replicated what they were doing, learned from them. I'm a very big admirer of Adam Schefter's. I mean, he's like he's an absolute rock star. It's so awesome he answers my texts faster than my wife. Like, it's absolutely absurd. He's an absolute machine. I could text him right now and he'd get right back to me. It's unbelievable. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I look up to him a lot. I've told him that. I always say, you are older than me, only by 1 year, but yeah, he's the man. A lot of other people. You guys ever hear of Fantasy Index magazine? Huge. See, this is like a bygone era.
That's an older
they
one,
were
right?
They were like the gold standard of print magazines from 90, probably, I guess, through like 2010. I don't know, they're still around, but he was a guy there that gave me a couple of breaks here. But those are some people off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's really good. And you mentioned a little bit about, trying to break in today and being able to get on screen, and that being good for people trying to make it now. Also, it being very crowded. So if you were to give any advice for people trying to make it now, what would that advice be?
Be yourself. That's it. I mean, that's what I do. Like, I've had like a little bit of a weird phenomenon on the Sirius XM radio show, because I've always been myself for the most part, but getting a little older and getting to where I've been, I will admit that I transitioned to DGAF mode very easily. If you can understand that at my advanced age, I just turned 53 years old. So I'm not sitting here. By the way, I'm the same exact age as Will Smith. So if you think Will Smith's not old, then I'm not old either. Okay, that's my guy right there. That's my comp.
As long as you can still get jiggy with it. Can you still get jiggy with it?
I could never get jiggy with it. That's the sad thing.
Let's not do the jiggy. No.
Well, I like that. Just kind of be yourself. We hear that it's so simple, but it's one of those things that some people struggle with more often than not. Just trying to be themselves out there, especially when you're trying to differentiate yourself from me, from Calvin Jr. here to someone else, right? It's all about people want to differentiate themselves. They want to have that shtick, but you kind of lose a bit of yourself if you're not being yourself.
That was the point that I failed to finish off on. Just because I'm to the stage where I am, I mean, not that I'm irresponsible. I mean, I try to push the envelope a little bit, but I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on it. But I'm like, well, screw it. I mean, I'm really going to be myself now because whatever. Oh, what, they're going to fire me? Ooh, I get to sleep in every day. Ooh, but the ironic thing is, I don't think the show's never been more popular. I mean, it's absolutely crushing on SiriusXM. So that would be my best advice. Don't force anything. Don't try to be someone you're not. Just be yourself.
It's great advice, which, look, you've made a career out of giving great advice. So appreciate you saying that. I want to just go ahead, and we're right at the hour. So we'll let you out of here. Let me just go ahead real quick and just plug our team. Major does a fantastic job with everything that he's doing. He's got a show that's going to be launching very soon. It's going to be touching on some great subjects that the fantasy community is desperately in need of being using those 2 ears and listening to. Can't wait for that. Major, you want to tell anybody about what you have in the works?
It's still building, but my show is going to be a little deeper than just fantasy football start and sit. I want to talk about like humanizing the players, talk about the language of fantasy football. It's a lot of different topics, but yeah, I want to dig a little bit deeper. I think we all are very intelligent people, and we can go just a bit more deeper in this fantasy world.
Yeah, that's man. Good luck, man. Go for that. I'm like that a little bit. I'm not the. I know you're cutting it off here, but I know I was all over the map. I always do this on these things, but please go.
You're free to jump in anytime.
I have always. And I've had great conversations with, not to name drop, but, LaDainian Tomlinson, I also interviewed for the magazine. Then I ended up, here's a quick one. And I've been so fortunate to have a million of these things. I interviewed a 24-year-old LaDainian Tomlinson who barely knew what fantasy football was in 2003 or 4. 13 years later, I co-hosted a fantasy football radio show with LaDainian Tomlinson on SiriusXM. I mean, that's crazy.
Man, that's so much inspiration, man. That's what we all strive for.
And LT is literally one of the greatest human beings in the history of the planet. Love LT. But I had conversations about, do they have that? Do they want to be great? Basically, that intangible, do you want to be great? That's a thing. Right. I'm also real big on body language, and I used to be made fun of by people, but all of a sudden now they see NFL teams, they study body language and really tips them off. And, when they interview kids at the combine and stuff like that. But I like that angle, man. Keep up with that.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Tera is coming off of a great announcement where she is partnering with Fantasy Pros, doing some great content over there, working on TikTok. How's that going?
It's going really good. I'm just, really excited to get my voice out there more, get out there with engaging with more people in the community. We had a great event the other day where I, got to sit down with talk wide receivers with Marcus Grant. So, I mean, just the opportunities that are out there, and I'm just enjoying moving myself forward. So yeah, thank you for mentioning it.
Well, and my advice to you real quick, because I've seen some of your videos, you are very good on camera. So I think you need to be there. I think you're very controlled and measured, which is I think, great. And you speak very well, concise. So keep going with the TV sports thing, because I think that's where it's at.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
just throwing it out there.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I like we're
Matt,
getting like
you just
goodie bags.
keep
We're
growing
getting,
that
like, goodies
mustache.
from 'em.
You know what I'm saying?
I was basically going to say he basically just described the anti-Matt there when describing Tera.
No.
John, are you on TikTok?
Oh God, no.
No.
But I can tell you, my daughter is right now, probably.
And of course, Matt over here. Matt's going to get the last word. But John, I know I speak for everybody when I say we're very thankful that you took your time to come on the show today, and everything that you're doing, everything that you've done in the past. But Fantasy Points, do you want to just tell everybody a little bit about Fantasy Points and what we can get out of a subscription there?
Well, you get a lot of good stuff. I'm gonna pass on that because that's how tired I am, because I've been up since 6 a.m. But you could use your promo code. Give out your promo code.
There you go,
and
Matt.
you guys get some money for that on this here broadcast.
Yeah, you know what? I use Fantasy Points for just about everything here. From the articles there, we get Barfield and Bear Trump with some great information. Edwin's got the medical information. Basically, Fantasy Points, you go out there, it's your one-stop shop for just about everything. Head over there, fantasypoints.com, drop 21 Vipers 10, get 10% off that subscription. This is one of those things that you absolutely need. We're just coming off of National Draft Week. We still have drafts coming up. I got my home league one, my league of records, so to speak. That who knows what's going to happen. Everything and anything happens at this draft. So I know I'll be printing off some PPR sheets right off.
What do you
there.
think of what do you think of the rankings at Fantasy Points? What do you think? Pretty tight, huh?
They're pretty close. The best part is they kind of line up quite nicely with how I have mine. So one of the things I like to do when I put out my rankings is I like to compare to reputable other people there and see, okay, how far off am I? Where am I off? If this guy is so much higher on your rankings and I'm so much lower, maybe I need to go back and reevaluate where I'm standing here. Am I missing something? So I love being able to go off these rankings and kind of check out, okay, it helps me become a better fantasy analyst. I use that term very loosely, but it also lets me become a better player and fan as well. So definitely that's where I'm getting all my information for when I go into drafts. A lot of the stuff that I post on Twitter and stuff is coming directly off the website there. So yeah, definitely head over to fantasypoints.com. Make sure you use that subscription there, that code 21Vipers10, get what you got to get. And you know what? We have to end this show here eventually. So I'm going to make sure that I kind of throw out this. And you know what? We hope you all had, dare I say it, a gorific day.
There you go. Guys, sorry for blabbering on here, rambling and all that, but keep doing what you're doing, and good luck, and good luck this year in fantasy, and we'll do this again.
Nice. Absolutely. I've already got the title for the next show. We're going to have like Schefter texts. So we're going to like text Schefter during the show, and we're going to get some responses live on the air.
We really do compare notes, him and I, every year. It's like a ritual, man. It's great.
That's awesome.
One year we made each other give each other's top 10 like targets. No discussion. We had 8 of 10 the same.
Wow.
Unbelievable. One of them was Dalvin Cook. One of them was Hunter Henry, who crapped the bed, but still, it was a good list.
Hey, it's okay to lose one every once in a while there. You know what I'm saying? So
when you get it, when you hit a home run for someone, they forgive basically 15 pop outs. You know what I'm saying?
Baseball.
I hear you.
True that. It's true. Oh, it's true.
Yeah, and like I said, if I have one good show every 10, I call that a win right there. So with that, this is the ViperCast, and we're moving on to next week. See you then.